I'm Rio Miner, and today I'm going to talk to you about why hiring military veterans can be a really great idea for your business. And also, since as you can see, I'm speaking on behalf of our mutual friend and partner, the Association of Certified Financial Crime Specialists, we'll be talking about how veterans can also bring a unique skill set to the anti-financial crime world and why that can be a good idea, again, both for the veteran who gets a rewarding career out of it and for all of those institutions that benefit from this unique and awesome workforce. So I put together just a little three-part reason why veterans are great. But first, I want to acknowledge something up front that might already be apparent to you if you have a veteran in your life. Certainly if you know me, and my kids know this, is that veterans, well, we think a little differently oftentimes, and of course we're not all the same. We're one of the most diverse groups of like lumping us into one group that you can possibly find. That's one of our great strengths, is that we really know how to get the best ideas from everybody. But I digress. The point is, this is your special knowledge public service announcement warning that veterans can be a little weird. Okay, I'm from San Francisco, where we think weird is good. I went to college at Oregon. We also think weird is good in Eugene. Weird can be really good for your business if weird is helping innovate, if weird is bringing fresh ideas to your plans. Okay, and as veterans, we are experts in bringing fresh ideas to plans because we can very easily spot what looks like a pile of BS to other folks. So special knowledge warning is that we sometimes might use language or tell jokes that seem more offensive to the general civilian population than to those of us that have lived within the knowledge of life or death situations. We have special knowledge that the world maybe doesn't work everywhere the way that it works in a well-ordered society, okay? And so, many of us see ourselves still as sheepdogs, people who spend 18 months in one of the services. I won't mention which one that does softer duties. You can all decide which one that is. And they still see themselves as a sheepdog to society, okay? So just know that that dynamic exists. We have sworn our blood and our lives to protect the group of people that we believe is our country, and we love that, and we are willing to serve that. And we will bring that same energy to your company, especially when we know the mission. So a clear knowledge of vision and mission is super important in any leadership situation. And with military veterans, it will actually speed you towards getting what you want more quickly. So we like to do a lot of things in military leadership, such as telling folks why something needs to be done a lot more than how it needs to be done. As long as folks understand the commander's intent, we can then operate within that framework. And that brings me to point number one, as why military veterans are so wonderful, because we do lead from the front and take initiative when we understand the mission. Now, I want to tell you a little story about my own experience, which involves school. Super boring military aspect of everyday life. We do a lot of schooling in the military. And one of the things is I went to the intelligence school, Fort Huachuca, Arizona, and I was actually part of the last officer class, the last captain's career course class, to learn the Soviet, the USSR doctrine and order of battle and things like that. And so in current events, we've seen wars kick off, we study history, and we've seen many armies that followed Soviet-style leadership, Soviet-style tactics, as well as strategy, and employed these things in wars throughout history. So we see it today on the battlefield with someone who is no longer calling themselves Soviet, but employs similar military philosophies. And what we notice in those militaries is that they very much have a push philosophy. You go there, you attack that problem. Whether the problem is a fortified enemy position or a big pile of look back work for your anti-money laundering or fraud team, it's really the same to us. We have a big mission, it's a problem, it's critical that it needs to get done, right? So you point one of these people who learned under the old Soviet doctrine towards a problem, and they will do exactly what needs to be done. And they might really be successful at that. And they will stop at the end of that hill, on the top of that hill, and they will stop for the day and wait for further instructions, perhaps ask for further instructions, perhaps, give a report or take some time figuring out the best report to give, etc., etc. However, if you take, let's say, 2 or 3 U.S. Marines and you point them in the right direction and tell them we need to take that hill, they will probably take that hill, the next hill, probably call you from a B&B in Paris and ask you what to do next. So that's the way the military in our country is taught. We lead from the front. We're very much a follow me type of an organization. And when we say that, we mean that we're willing to lead from the front. We're willing to do everything that we're going to ask those under us to do. And we'll take initiative when we understand that mission. So lead is number one. We lead from the front. Number two, military folks, military veterans, those of us who are trained in this system, have a certain sort of mental toughness, which is sometimes also known as intestinal fortitude. And we know from painful experiences. I'm talking major painful experiences. I'm talking instructor. It's Full Metal Jacket, right? Like that guy was a real DI, right? So we know from painful experience that the mind is a bigger limiter than the body. Okay, I know for sure. And actually, I was speaking about this with my wife the other night, and she's like, "Oh, like just push through because you can do more than you think you can." And I'm like, hang on. I know I don't want to. I know I can, okay? Because I've seen it, okay? I've seen the 12-hour turn into 24-hour crisis mode, and we just operate. So that is amazing, because if you need us to put in the extra hour to do the extra case or the extra 5 cases to take on the load from somebody who's sick or having a baby, we can do it. We are willing to pitch in for the team that we believe in, okay? I actually also counsel military folks to, maybe not pitch in so hard sometimes for these companies that aren't really going to value you. So, by the way, Rio Miner is going to give it to you straight. Companies, watch out. Like, I'm not going to counsel our veterans to come there and work for garbage. And I'm not going to counsel them to come in and work for pennies. And I'm not going to come in and counsel them to undervalue themselves, because I guarantee you that at 19 that child had more responsibility enforcing American foreign policy at the point of a rifle than you will ever have in your entire life as a CEO or whatever. And that's just a fact that we charge our folks with that. If you're 3 guys on a hill, the guy with the earliest data rank is now in charge, private. And guess what? I'll see you in Paris, because that's how we operate, and that's what we're willing to bring you, is that military toughness, the mental toughness and intestinal fortitude, that the body can and will go farther than the mind can ever imagine. We will bring that to you. We will bring that sense of innovation, toughness, stick-to-itiveness, work-it-through-itiveness, all right? We sing a cadence, not just up the hill or over the hill, but through the hill. That was number 2. So number 1 was lead. We lead from the front. We 2 have mental toughness and intestinal fortitude. And 3, we are trainable. The Army, I was part of the Army. I was a 9-year military veteran. I guess I skipped that part of the story. I also have spent about 15 years doing like half the jobs in the financial crime world, which makes it hard to explain to people the level of responsibility and diversity in my own career. I guess, it's hard to show the difference between the guy they call specialist and the guy they call generalist. So anyway, number 3, I know you're all excited to hear it. Number 3, what does the military do well? What does the Army do well? I tell you, the number 1 best thing the Army does is train. Okay, I can take a 16, 17, 18, 19-year-old snot-nosed, pimply-faced nobody from Nowheresville and turn them into a highly efficient, squared-away machine that will do anything I want, from paint rocks to take over cities. And that's the goal. And so far, we're the best at it ever in history. So we're trainable, because we've been trained and we've seen how it's done. And we have this philosophy in our military that says we also train the trainer. So I don't have the energy to train like 100,000 people how to do something, right? I mean, it would just take all day and all night and I would do nothing else, although I like training. And so instead, what we do is we say, hey, now guess what? I'm going to give you an extra chevron and you're a corporal. Guess what, Corporal B? You now get to go come with me and teach all these folks how to do what I just taught you how to do. Oh, what? Yep. Guess what? You're in charge. What now? Okay. And that, again, is the spirit that we can bring to your business. So what are your questions? We had the special knowledge warning. We had the fact that we are going to lead from the front and take initiative in a way that others don't do, but really, and especially when we understand the mission. We're willing to turn off our brains sometimes and just allow stupid to be as stupid is, but we prefer not to. You can let us just earn a paycheck, but we prefer not to. We prefer to take initiative, understanding the commander's intent. We have mental toughness and intestinal fortitude, knowing that we can and will go further than any mind has ever imagined. And we are eminently trainable. You can teach me to fly an airplane. You can teach me to analyze a rocket crater for the direction and distance it came from. And you can teach me to storm that hill all day and all night until finished. Okay? And by the way, that means that like your little pile of alerts doesn't even faze me. Okay? Like I sat around in my first job and I was like, hang on, did I get demoted to a warrant officer like 3 levels below myself? And now I'm just going to do the same thing all the time. So, and I could have stayed in that. I could have been successful just being an investigator. And I don't mean just, investigators are incredible. But that brings me to our call to action. Okay. The call to action. If you have a veteran or former government employee who can do 3 things, I'm big on these 3-point plans, right? We got lead from the front, mental toughness, trainable, okay, LMT, like any good military person, I'm gonna come up with an initial set of acronym, whatever, and then the call to action. Your veteran can probably, and if they can, like, it's kind of hard to train people who really can't do these things, but it's also doable, right? I can train people to do these 3 things as well. I just have to start earlier in the process. So, I need a person for the financial crimes basic jobs. Okay, I'm talking about enhanced due diligence reviews. I'm talking about anti-money laundering investigations. I'm talking about fraud investigations. Okay, we need troops in this fight against financial crime. You out there are all watching this video because you understand the number of bodies that it takes to just sort through this. And yeah, we've got a bunch of fancy, digital tools that we're implementing and working on. We've got better AI now that we can use to analyze things and home in on exactly what we're trying to find and make that pile of alerts smaller. But you're always going to need a whole bunch of capable people who are smart enough to get the job done at every level. So, what do you need to be able to do? What are those top 3 financial crime skills you need to be able to research? I call it Googling Sturf. I can't say the word I would normally say off video. I need you to be able to research, okay? Use a search engine. I need you to be able to run a spreadsheet, okay? Rows and columns, sort and filter, okay? And then I need you to be able to write about it. Write a report about it. Here we go. 1 page. What happened? What are the details? Who do we contact afterwards? It's a basic format. It was actually taught to me by a former Secret Service agent who was one of my initial bosses in the financial crime field. So it's just a basic, report. It's a sit rep. It's just a quick, after action report saying, here's what happened. Here's what, you can do about it. Okay. So those are the things that I think everybody needs to be able to do in this field. Those are the hard, simple skills. After that, like I can teach you why we're doing it. The PSA Act 1970. I can teach you all the Wolfsburg group, high intensity financial crime, anything you want. Okay. After that, we can talk about the laws and the whys. Okay. What people really need is to make sure, okay, I can do these 3 things. And then I can take 1 and 2 and 3 and put those things together, okay? So the critical thinking is also something that needs to be taught to some people. But now, let me shift gears and talk about a little analogy within the financial crime space that is door kickers versus intel analysts, okay? And a lot of times maybe you're familiar with watching, maybe an FBI style TV show. You watch Blacklist or something. I personally like spy shows. There's a British one on MI5. There's all kinds of stuff, right? And in every one of these TV shows and movies, you have some folks that are out there and they've got, usually a gun and a badge, and they're on the door, they're stacked on the door, they're kicking it in, they're finding the perp, they're gathering evidence, putting it in a baggie with gloves, right? Preserving that chain of evidence, my fraud folks. And so those are my fraud folks, actually. Nice time to mention you all. The fraud folks are the ones who are typically more door kicking oriented, right? Fraud is a crime. It's usually a relatively well-defined crime. We may not know the scope of it. We may not know the perpetrator. We may not know all the victims. But we do know that sort of like there's a crime that's been committed. And what we want to do is we want to create a flash to bang kill chain that stops the crime from happening any further, stops the money from moving if possible, stops the proverbial bleeding, and then puts it through to preventative measures and things like that. Right? So fraud is very kind of law enforcement oriented. A big part of the certified fraud examining the examiners, is that you tend to need to learn about courtroom procedures, how the U.S. court system works, what are those standards of evidence, things like this, to be able to make sure that if and when you're called upon to testify as an anti-fraud expert or certified fraud examiner in court, you actually know what, the proper steps that needed to be taken. You locked up your paperwork at the end of the night. You had proper encryption on your computer system and hard drive and whatnot. So those are our door kickers. And there's a lot of, military operational specialties, MOSs, that could pipeline very well into that type of a thinking and that type of a thought process. Military police comes to mind. Shore Patrol, whoever, I don't know exactly what those MOSs are. And that's why this is your call to action, is find us those people, right? Bring them to ACFCS, bring them to my LinkedIn personally. These are really great people that sometimes have done a lot of cool things and don't know what mission to take on next. Let's bring them into the financial crimes field and family and community. Okay. And then there's another community, the intelligence community. And this community does very, very well with sort of the gray area and the critical thinking and the pulling the investigative threads together of anti-money laundering, BSA, and this type of work. So in my mind, in my analogy, the TV show, these are the folks behind the computer. These are the Abbeys of the world in the lab that are telling you where to go, which door to kick, right? A lot of times, so money laundering is it's a secondary crime, like anger is a secondary emotion, they keep telling me. It's my veteran speak, sorry, you guys. And so the specified unlawful activities, the SUAs mentioned in the U.S. legal code, are the ones, the big ones we hear about: drug trafficking, human trafficking, of course, one of the things that's near and dear to all of our hearts to stop. These things earn money, and they're specified unlawful activities. Fraud is one of those, and these are ways that one can earn money doing criminal activity, and then when you move that money throughout the financial system, either by placing it in the banks, cash, maybe you're doing a conversion transaction from your credit card sales or peer-to-peer activities, and then moving that through, you layer it through, and of course integrate it by buying your yacht. That money laundering process starts with a crime. Okay, and so the analytical flows required work really well with those that are coming out of the intelligence community, the people who are taught not just to put 2 and 2 together, but also consider if factor X is going to change the full nature of 2 and 2. Okay, the ability to evaluate a landscape and see where are the possible threats, where are the most likely places that this threat will enter our institution. Okay, the principles that folks learn in the intelligence community, the principles of investigation, right? Very little of it is spycraft like you see in James Bond. I mean, I love that stuff. I can't tell you about all the stuff that I've done in that area. None. And I can't disclose, nor would I be disposed to disclose if I had any knowledge of such activities. But we're also good at keeping secrets. The BSA is actually a law, the Bank Secrecy Act, that provides secret cover. So it's actually, like code word secret. You can't disclose the existence or knowledge of a SAR or a party to a SAR or the reason for a SAR, right? Outside of, certain need to know scenarios. So these are intelligence community functions. Sometimes I used to wonder why they didn't have bars on the window or put us in the basement. basement, right? Which I'm glad they didn't. I can tell you guys, hey, Intel folks, it's like being a spy, but you don't have to live in the vault. So yeah, because the real spy work happens behind a computer, and those of us that know that kind of sleuthing can translate very well. And so the call to action is, you know, bring me your military folks that might have these skills of research, spreadsheet, maybe a little bit of financial knowledge, but like I can teach you, if you can run a spreadsheet, I can teach you which numbers you're looking for. That's not hard. And finally being able to write a coherent paper about it, one page, that's it, about 200 words, depending how complicated the case is. But the point is that I'm telling you right now about the NUG work. And so back to my veterans, why might you be interested in this work? Well, that's the NUG work. There's lots of companies that just need NUG workers for 6 months, a year, and it's like, this like probably, high hours a week, probably low pay to just repetitively do this work. But then you get that on your resume, and now there's a whole family tree of anti-financial crime careers that you can do. There's things like governance, there's policy management, there's risk assessment, there's gap testing, there's all these analytics and security professions around it that are not your typical, information security. It's not data security, it's not data privacy, it's something else. It's data management, it's modeling and governance and analytics, understanding what the picture of the data is, creating the picture, and understanding what it means. What does that sound like? Intel work. Okay, so I feel like perhaps at this point you've gotten my point. Thanks for coming to my Rio talk, and I'm going to leave time for questions, which, since this is a recording, you'll have to submit to me somewhere else. Thank you so much for listening, and I appreciate it. Bring us your veterans. Let's give them a new mission in anti-financial crime. Cheers. It's a secondary crime, so there has to be a crime that began the flow of funds that made the flow of funds dirty. We call it a predicate crime. It's also known as a specialized or a special unlawful activity. It's just an SUA. Yeah, but what is the S exactly? It's specified unlawful activity. You guys get to go through this in real time. You can edit that out, can't you? Bloopers with Rio.